Hey, what's up, guys? Ronin Man here. Today I want to talk about sexless relationships and essentially loveless relationships. Why do I want to talk about this on this channel? The reason is because pretty much everyone on this channel has been in a relationship before. And a lot of MGTOWs actually secretly would like to have a relationship, but they just want to have a good relationship. They don't want to have a bad relationship. Other guys listening, you have a baby, you have a wife, you're invested in something, and you're looking for a better way to live your life. But you're in a situation where, it's not the same as a single guy running around Southeast Asia, right? But you're looking for better ways to live. You're looking for trying to figure things out so that you can make better choices. I think this sexless relationship episode is going to be very beneficial because I'm going to break it down, how it starts, what are the repercussions, how it's so confusing to be in the middle of it if you're the one being rejected. And that's the perspective we'll take in this episode. I know that there are other scenarios. I know that there are married women who are rejected by their husbands. And I think you'll find, because I know there are female listeners now, that a lot of these things apply to both sides. So let's get into it. How does it start? Sexless relationships don't start like you would think. They don't start with a plan. Nobody decides, hey, I'm going to have a sexless relationship. This is it. It's insidious. They start one way and they end up another way. And the person doing it doesn't even realize what the end result of this action is. It's very similar to a guy who, tries some kind of opiate drug, and the next thing you know, he maybe uses something pharmaceutical. The next thing you know, 2 years later, he's doing heroin or fentanyl or something, and his life has completely changed beyond recognition. His friends are gone, his money's gone, his respect is gone. He spent time in jail, he has a record, his arm is covered in tracks. Nobody respects him. It's very difficult for him to get back from there, back to where he was. But he didn't realize it in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just like a party. It was like, hey, I'll try that, and it led him down a path. And this is very similar type of thing. Stopping sex in a relationship is a very bad habit. And some people this is the way they operate. And you have to know that. And you have to be ready to do what you need to do. And so let's go into this. How does this start? It usually starts with something very small. So, for example, a girl might be resentful about something. Okay, maybe it could be anything, really. It could be anything. It could be she's not happy with the kind of sex you're having. It could be she's unhappy that you stayed up too late, or you shouldn't have gone out with your friends, or maybe, like the young girl, she might want something and then think this is a good way to get it, is kind of, hold out on you a little bit, and then you'll do what she wants. Or it could be like some kind of mental problem that she has, or it could be, a lot of people would say it's low libido and like chemical this and bullshit that. I don't buy any of those. I really don't. It's just not, I don't think it's true. I think that often what happens in the most miserable thing is that the reason why this stuff never gets solved is because nobody wants to think about what's really happening. Often what happened is she lost interest in you. So she no longer likes you. And so now she's starting to reject you physically. And it's because she doesn't like you anymore. That's the most common thing. And she often can't admit it to herself. She's not going to say, she really probably, she can't even not even admit it. She doesn't even realize it. She just feels this feeling when she looks at you, right? So she just kind of rejects you, and when you come towards her, she doesn't feel good. She's just like, I don't feel good. No. And then you're kind of on the other side, the person being rejected. And I think this is one of the big problems is when you're being rejected and when you're rejecting, the feeling is completely different. And you have no idea what the other one is feeling. You have no idea of the immense, strong feelings that the other person is having. And especially the more you do it, the more, you get used to it, right? So as the person being rejected, if you're being rejected, you're in a situation where, let's say, typical relationship, you guys have had sex many times, you have your patterns, you have your things, and you're reaching out to her, and you're expecting, a hug, kiss, whatever that you guys usually do. When she kind of says, oh, I'm a little bit tired. The first time you're kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, she's tired, okay. And then you don't take it that seriously. I recommend you don't do that, actually, but this is what most people do. So you say, oh, okay, it's kind of nothing, it's not in the mood, whatever. And then, she doesn't, and again, as the person being rejected, it's quite difficult to really put it in perspective because no one's explaining this stuff to you. So you're kind of like, you don't really know what it means, or you're just kind of like, oh, okay. And then you think, well, what kind of a jerk am I to think I can get it? It's like you start to doubt yourself. Like, is this, what am I, sometimes I'm not in the mood, I'm tired or going to sleep or whatever. Maybe you've never rejected her, but you still feel like, hey, it's fair, whatever. So you kind of just go to sleep or whatever. Then the next time you lean over and it's kind of a similar thing. She's not in the mood. Often the excuses are very good. And this is one of the problems. There's a lot of deception and lying because nobody wants to be honest about this stuff because something very, important is happening and nobody really wants to face these kind of things. So the girl will start to engineer situations that make it difficult to be intimate. So she might, for example, do any number of things. She might start to go to sleep earlier than you so that, when you get to bed, she's already asleep. Now, she might not even be asleep. She might be on her computer until she hears you coming upstairs, and then she closes the computer and pretends like she's asleep, right? Because, she's often frustrated, right? She's angry about something. She's not like just going to sleep like, hey, things are perfect for her. But you come up and you think she's asleep, or she looks like she's asleep, and you're like, oh, okay, I don't know. If I wake her up, it's not good, right? So I won't do it. So it's these little situations that continue, and they lead down a dark path. Essentially, the relationship at that point, if you're honest with yourself, it's probably over already. Because she's starting to reject you on a regular basis, and there's some reason in her mind. And I know that there's a lot of counselors who want to take your money and they want to, have you guys talk about this, talk about that, and it's going to fix it. And I'm not against counselors. I think it's possible there could be a counselor that could uncover this stuff and somehow repair it. But your best option as a guy is probably to get out of there at that point, because there's just so much, the guys, as a guy, your presence is what gives. A woman wants to have a man. It doesn't necessarily have to be with her all the time. She wants to know that she has a man. And so if you give her that and she doesn't give you intimacy, then you're going down a very bad path as a guy. It's really not good. And the thing is, it's not helping her either, because she's unhappy. So you're kind of helping her by bringing this thing to the surface as soon as possible, instead of kind of covering it up, because she goes through a lot of pain too, through this whole thing, right? And the sex is only a small part of it. What actually disappears when the sex disappears is pretty much everything. So love disappears, all positive emotions disappear, little cute texts that she used to send you disappear, smiling when she sees you across the room disappear. These little things that make life meaningful, or they make a relationship. That's why you in a relationship, right? Is you want to be with somebody that makes you feel good and you make them feel good, and you know what I mean? That you want to share things, and that's why people have relationships, right? So there's all these, there's self-esteem comes from relationships, but all these things go the exact opposite way when everything disappears, and it's kind of like in this Cold War, essentially. So now, what can be confusing is obviously you can still have sex. So in a sexless relationship, there's still sex going on, like once a month. And so once every 30 days, you guys are having sex. So it's very easy to kid yourself that you're in a relationship because you think, well, we had sex last night. It was great. Maybe it's not as common as before, but hey, blah, 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 blah. You come up with all these excuses. But in reality, looking at it from a global perspective, why did you get in the relationship? What did you expect out of it? What were you looking for out of the relationship? And what did you have before? It doesn't make any sense because it's completely a different bargain than what you originally had asked for, signed up for. So you now you're in a situation where you're not getting what you expected and you're like kind of confused. So most guys get very confused about this point. They're kind of like what is going on? Like, women are known as, in the media, women are known as great communicators. They are the ones who, are so good at communicating relationships. And supposedly guys are the ones who are not. Guys are the ones who have trouble communicating, difficulty saying their feelings, and all that. But that's not the case in this scenario. Is when somebody cuts off sex in a relationship, it's never talked about. It's always kind of silent. It's this kind of like subtle thing. There's always a bunch of excuses. And if the girl's smart, the excuses are pretty good. So they pull on your heartstrings even. They're like, hey, I don't feel good. What do you expect? I did this, I did that. It could be even something she could even use. Lies just fly out of their mouths because they don't want to face what's happening. They don't want to face that they are rejecting you and they are destroying the relationship. It's not in their like wheelhouse to like suddenly come, in a moment's notice, just realize that this is not what they want or that they're not attracted to you. They don't want to tell you that. They don't want to face it. And so they're going to say, you know that I'm busy today and I have to go to work and I have to do this. You can't trust. You have to look at the global situation in your relationship. You have to look at the text, look at the pictures, look at the situation and start to think, is this what it used to be? Does this all make sense? So maybe one excuse makes sense, right? One excuse is like, yeah, she's tired. That makes sense. Oh, she's got to go to her mom's. That makes sense. She hurt her leg. That makes sense. And everything makes sense individually. But together they don't make any sense at all because you're in an intimate relationship and all of a sudden you're not having sex anymore, and it's just this once a month obligatory thing. And you're like, wait a second, this became a sexless relationship. And the problem with sexless relationships is that they get worse. They start out being a small, minor difficulty, but you got to think about what's going on in the woman's body, in the woman's mind. It's much more serious. Guys tend to not take these things that seriously, but it's actually what's going on inside her mind is a lot, because here's the person that she was with before, and all of a sudden she is rejecting the physical intimacy. So she's not getting that anymore, right? And she has to kind of get ready. It's kind of like, okay, if you have to meet somebody that you don't like, let's say you have to meet like a boss, or you have to go to the IRS, or maybe you have some like really sticky legal situation. Before you go, you kind of steel yourself, get ready, and you have to kind of go in there and you're like, you have put on your armor essentially. Well, that's what she's doing every time she's saying no to you, because she knows that you're not going to be happy. She knows that you're going to be hurt. She knows that it's not good. And she might even know that she shouldn't be doing it. Like, she might have two mindsets where she's kind of like, I shouldn't be doing this. This guy's nice to me. I'm in this relationship, but I don't want to do it. And, she could be like having her own struggles herself too. But she's rejecting you. And what she's doing is she's undermining the whole relationship, because whenever she sees you, she kind of has to steel herself a little bit. Okay. And then you try to reach for her. It feels like a violation almost to her, because she's rejecting you. And again, she could still have sex once in a while. That doesn't affect anything. It's kind of like having one meal a week. Doesn't mean you're eating, right? So now she's starting to internally shut down towards you. And then when you do have sex, she doesn't feel the same way. She maybe feels gross. She doesn't feel good. And then and she's not talking about it. So it's all going on inside of her. Maybe she's talking to her friends about it. Whatever the reason is the situation is getting worse quickly. So what happens next is basically there's different things, like, depends on you too, because being rejected is like, it's almost torture, mental torture, because you are at your most vulnerable when you're reaching for your lover. You really are, you're naked, or you're, basically naked, and you're laying down. You don't have any clothes. You're not in the mode of meeting the IRS, right? You're just like opening yourself up. Maybe you're insecure with your body a little bit. Maybe you're, all kinds of things could be going on in your mind, and you're opening yourself up. And then when you get turned down, it feels very bad. And so what happens is the person being rejected quickly has a very lower sense of self-esteem. It's like they feel unwanted, and if you've ever been rejected on a regular basis, you know exactly what I'm talking about, whether you're a man or a woman. And most women haven't been rejected sexually, so they don't really know. Most women don't really know what this feeling is. But I read enough articles now, getting ready for this podcast. I wanted to get as many opinions as possible, and talking to a lot of people, that when a woman's rejected, women are pretty good at expressing how they feel about this. And it's like, I feel like I'm in hell. I'm being tortured. My self-esteem is in the garbage. If you search sexless relationship, you can see the titles of the articles, and 90% of those are women writing those articles. Guys just don't write about this stuff. But there's many more guys being rejected than there are women in the world. But just reading the women's stuff, you can kind of understand how you feel when you're rejected. The problem is you get used to it. So when you get treated badly, it just becomes a normal thing. It's like, okay, this is the way I'm treated. It's like, it's difficult to see. And also you're having all these conflicting feelings, because you're feeling like, this is the girl that loves me. This is the girl that we bought a house to. This is the girl that I committed to, like I left this other girl. So you don't want to tell your parents, and you don't want to, you fake it when you go outside, and you feel rejected, and you don't have many options. And the thing is once sex stops, okay, and when I say stops, again, I'm saying once a month. Once sex stops, it really doesn't start again. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people in relationships don't understand. They think that it's kind of like a switch that you can just turn it on and off, and then it won't be harmed by this. But sex is a funny thing. It's a complicated. It's everything. It's intimacy. It's kissing. It's hugging. It's smiling. It's eyes smiling. It's happiness. It's everything. It's your aura. And so when somebody turns off, when a woman especially turns off her emotions towards a guy, she's really ending it, but in the worst way, because she's not being honest about it. She's not telling you how she feels. She's not working through the problems. She's just shutting down. And shutting down creates a whole bunch of other problems besides the original problem. The original problem is usually pretty easy to deal with, but it's what happens afterwards. So this is how people get into sexless relationships long term. And so then, of course, what happens next is the guy starts to sleep, not even looking at her, because he doesn't want to even look at her, because if the guy still likes her and wants to be with her, it's painful. It's super painful, especially if she's hot. I mean, it's I'm not kidding. It's very fucking painful. It's emotionally painful. I'm not talking about something stupid like kids talk about blue balls. I'm talking about emotion, you feel rejected, you're not worth anything, and you see this person right there in front of you that you used to have such great times, and you're just like, it's just like torture, like just seeing them, and you're like, fuck, this sucks, and also you're second guessing yourself, and then your self-esteem course goes down. So when you do have sex, of course the sex isn't going to be as good. It's not going to be as good for many reasons. One is you're not warmed up, you haven't been doing it on a regular basis, and you're kind of surprised when it happens, because the person who's shutting down the sex is totally controlling sex now. So when the sex gets doled out, it's going to be a surprise to the person who was being rejected. So they don't have time mentally to like get back into the mode. They're just like, oh, now sex is available suddenly. And then they have sex. And then they're kind of like, damn, I wish we would have, I wish I would have known more. I wish I would have had more time. I wish I would have, shown more how much I appreciate that. And there's so many things in my mind whenever this happens. And again, when you date a lot of women, you're going to have women who do this. And when you sleep with a lot of women, there's certain women that just use this, and I don't know what the reason is. The reason could be many things. A lot of people blame it on chemicals, low libido, and stuff like that. Or maybe they worked in a bar or some situation where, they were damaged. They were damaged sexually because they maybe got abuse from clients. Maybe they had some situation when they're younger with their father. There could be any number of millions of reasons, but none of those mattered in the beginning, but all of a sudden they matter. See what I'm saying? So they don't really matter because they were there in the beginning. It's kind of like some guy saying the girl's not hot after he's been fucking her for 2 years. Like, if you didn't notice she wasn't hot the first time, then why do you notice now, right? It didn't matter then, it doesn't matter now. So it's same with sex, but these excuses come out whenever they don't like you anymore, basically. And so what a guy has a difficult time saying is like kind of like facing the reality that it's not even, I want to take it down from like, there's love, right? And then there's hate, right? And in the middle is like is up near love, really. When you like somebody, that means a lot, right? But what you find is when there's this deep freeze in a relationship is the person doesn't even like you. And you'll see them treating other people better than you. This also hurts. This type of stuff really hurts. Like, for example, she might treat her brother better than you. She might help her brother's business, but she won't help you. Or she might help her neighbor and she won't help you. She might help her friend, but she doesn't want to help you. And all these little slights, because she's emotionally shutting down to you. So everything is shutting down. Everything from jokes, humor, caring, giving, everything's shutting down. And it's crazy that people stay together in these situations because there is nothing left. And it's like, it's such a joke. I mean, most relationships are such a joke that I'm just flabbergasted what's happening in the world today. So let's go long term. What are the options you have if you're in a loveless relationship? Having sex 10 times a year. The only option, I would say 3 options. One is you can have an affair, and that's fine. It's an accepted option for men or women. If the other person is rejecting you, you have to think about what that costs and the benefits and all the issues, because often when someone rejects you, they still demand that you're monogamous. So if they see other girls calling you on the phone all the time and you're buying condoms and you're leaving, a lot of girls will be very angry with you, even though they're not having sex with you. So it doesn't make any sense. They don't want to have sex with you. They don't want to touch you, but they're going to be angry if you're sleeping with other people. So it's like a total, it really is like, it's an absolutely miserable situation. The other situation you have is you can choose to have an open relationship. I personally have a lot of experience with open relationships because I did the bull thing where I would, guys would want me to sleep with screw through their wives or whatever. And I did that. And so I was the guy coming into their open relationship. And I can tell you that I don't recommend that because it's a very explosive situation. I can say that. And I stopped doing it because I found that most of the girls that, the wives I was sleeping with started to fall in love with me. And they wanted my phone number. They wanted to meet me. And the reason why I was doing it was because I knew that the guys wanted it. And I knew that they wanted it. It made them happy. It made the relationship better. So I was happy to do it then as almost as a service. Come in, make them happy, leave. My job, my goal was not to steal their wives. And I had no desire to do that. And when it was offered on a regular basis, I realized that it doesn't really work. Like, girls fall in love with you. And so open relationships, the reason why open relationships exist is because there's two partners. One partner is more sexually valuable than the other one. And so the less valuable one allows the other one to have an open relationship so they can keep them. That's basically how it works. So let's say the girl's very attractive, the guy isn't, and the guy will allow her to have an open relationship just so he can keep her. Not so he can have one himself, but just so he can keep her. That's usually what happens. So it's kind of a pathetic situation. And if you're in an open relationship and you're happy, that's great. I know that there are relationships that do work out. I'm talking about, for the vast majority, it's not the panacea. It's not the perfect situation that you might be looking for, in my experience. And I do have experience with this. So I think that open relationships, and I know that a lot of people are having sex, even though they're married to other people, they're doing it now more and more openly. I think this is another kind of fake thing in society. It's like you still have a relationship. I mean, it's like, come on. It's like, if you want to have sex with other people, get single, go out and meet new people, and take a chance, go meet some new people. Don't sit around trying to keep this fake thing together so that you can have other relationships that are fake. And then it's just a hodgepodge of shit, really. And it's a fake solution to the real problem. The real problem is that you're not wanted anymore. And that nobody wants to face that because it's painful. Now, it's not as painful as it would be because you subconsciously know this. You subconsciously know she doesn't want you anymore. And that's why you're miserable. And so, like a guy sitting in the movie theater and the movie's already finished and you're sitting there by yourself and no one else is there, and you're thinking, I don't want to leave the movie. I don't want to leave the movie. The movie's over. The movie's over. Everyone's gone home. The heater's turned off. You're sitting there by yourself, and there is nothing to leave. You can just leave the theater now because there's no relationship. There's no movie going on. So that's the scenario that most people are in. And I hope that I really want any experience that I have, anything I have to share, I want it to benefit people. And people being in miserable situations, essentially with people that hate them, is not a good thing. And I don't care what the reason is. It's a fake thing that society accepts, and it's just like, it's socially acceptable does not mean shit, you guys. It doesn't mean shit. If you're with somebody who does not want to be with you, you are crazy. Literally, you are fucking crazy to stay. You can kid yourself. You can lie to yourself. There's a million podcasts you can listen to about how you can schedule sex and you can do this and you can do that. If the person doesn't want to be with you, does not like you, and, all kinds of problems are going to come up. All of a sudden, she's going to have all sexual problems you're going to have to deal with. She's going to start talking about all this old stuff. It's not relevant if she likes you. Just like in the beginning of the relationship. If she likes you, she's like totally fine. Everything's fine, And same with you. If you like her, then you're fine. But as soon as you start not liking her, all of a sudden, you start coming up with all these excuses. And all it is a way to kind of logically try to figure out what this emotional thing is. But the emotional thing is really the heart of it. And I really urge you not to fall into these traps that society has for you. And if you're doing the rejecting, if you're listening to this and you're doing the rejecting, I would say that you it would be very good for you to look at yourself and to really think about your life. Like really, really think about it. What are you doing and why are you doing it? And I mean, the other person's feelings, you probably don't really care about, honestly. So think about yourself and think about what do you want and why are you here? I think that for some people, they stay together because they have children and they want the children to have a mother and a father. And that is I would say I respect that. I think the children, I had a mother and father, and I think it really helped me when I had difficult times. Even though my father wasn't perfect, I had a father, and that father was there, and he paid the bills. He went to work. It's a different era, but still, he was there. And when I was out of line, I knew he was coming home. And that was a good thing. So if you're staying together for a child, I think that's one thing. But I think that even that only goes so far. I think you have to look at it more closely, and to aim for something that's real in the relationship. I think that I had a friend, actually my mentor Don, who I talked about in the original podcast, the early Ronin Man podcast. I talked about him a lot. He used to counsel a lot of people, and a lot of them were women. And he told me what he told them. He said they would come to me and they would say, "Oh, I'm having this problem. My husband's this. He's doing this. He's doing that." It's like they'd be all upset about a million things, and then he would just say, "How often are you guys having sex?" And the woman would say, "Well, we're not having sex, but not very often." But that's not the reason. It's because he's being a asshole, and he this, and he didn't finish school, and he did that, and blah 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 blah. And then he says, "Look, go have sex with him and come back." And the girl comes back and he's like, "How's things going?" And she's like, "Oh, they're a lot better. Things are good." It's like, it's very simple, is that sex is a big part of relationships. And I can guarantee you this, when she went back and had sex with the guy, she was giving him much more than sex. She was giving him smiles. She was giving him self-esteem. She was giving him support. She was loving him, and the guy responded, right? And so relationships are not that complicated, but you can't take something like this out of it. I think it's a total farce that you can take sex out of a relationship and still have a relationship, an intimate relationship. It's literally impossible. So you have to find, if you do want to have an intimate relationship, you have to find a way that you guys have sex, and that's it. There is no other answer. You got to find out a way, and having sex is actually not that difficult. It's not something that's impossible. It's not like going to the moon, especially if your partner likes you, and finds you attractive, So I think that's like the solution if you're going to try to do something long-term together with somebody, is you have to find a way that you have sex. And again, like I say, it's not sex. It's everything. It's intimacy. It's smiling. It's laughing. It's you know what I mean? It's supporting the other. It's everything. And so when you have sex, you'll naturally feel better. And a lot of these things, they come along for the ride. They come along as a bonus. So I think that if you're in a sexless relationship, first thing you need to do is look at it closely. If you feel like it's a deep freeze, Cold War type thing, I would say that you have to leave. It's best to leave. And I don't care what the situation is. Nobody deserves that. You don't deserve it. You do not deserve a miserable life for the rest of your life. That's just not. There's too many people out there. The world is a big place, and there's a lot of lovely people that you can meet who actually do want to have sex with you, and they do want to kiss you, and they do want to hold you. And like I said, 50% of marriages don't, but 50% of marriages do. So that's that's not a bad percentage there. You flip a coin, right? So if you do want to have a relationship, find one where you guys are compatible. And don't let any excuses get in the way, because the excuses, they're just on top of some emotional decision. And if that emotional decision is no, then no amount of logic, no amount of cajoling, no amount of fights, no amount of doing housework, no amount of like supporting or this or that is going to change that. I really disagree with a lot of the modern pop psychology. It's just not true. You have to have that emotional connection. And then a lot of other things can come out of that. So find somebody, if you want a relationship, find somebody that gives you that emotional connection. And maybe you don't want that. You're a MGTOW guy. You're like, I understand this podcast has been great. I can kind of analyze my old relationships and see where they fell apart. And now I realize that, it wasn't that great anyway, maybe for you. Other people, they feel like MGTOW and red pill and all this stuff has gotten them to the point where they're like, I see, 90% bad and I see 10% good. And they say, well, I'm going to try to get that 10% good, right? Kind of what they call purple pill, right? There's all kinds of guys on this podcast. Everybody goes through different phases. We're different. I would say we're red pill, purple pill, blue pill, all at different times in our life. And that's fine. And knowledge of each phase will help you. One thing that can help you if you're being rejected is to really pat yourself on the back, because it's really fucking not easy. It is really hard to be rejected. It is like, it sounds so pussy, but it is fucking hard, man. It's one of the hardest things you can go through. You just feel like you're worthless. You just feel like nobody wants you. For me, I really don't ever get that low, because I think it's because I just had so many girls that liked me that I know that there's tons of girls out there who like me. Like, I just have a self-concept that girls like me. So I'm like, I'll just have to find another girl. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing I go through in my mind. But I know a lot of guys, if you're not, and you're just kind of like feeling totally rejected by all society, I really want you to know that you're not. That might be your mindset, but it's just not true. There are people who will love you for real out there. And there is happiness in love and without love. But there is definitely nothing but misery in a situation where you're not wanted and you're not respected and you're not needed. And, the insults just get worse and worse and worse. And of course, the really, if you need any more motivation to look honestly at your life, I would say do this. Think about the reality of long-term sexless relationships. I'm going to tell you right now what happens. Is long-term, 100%. This is what happens. Okay, so your girlfriend, your wife starts rejecting you. Okay? Your relationship goes into a deep freeze. You feel anger, frustration, loneliness, worthlessness, lower self-esteem. That makes you less attractive. She, on the other hand, feels terrible, because even though she's the one rejecting, she's also not getting sex, right? So she feels bad. As time goes past, could be a month, a year, 5 years, whatever. Eventually, what's going to happen is her sexual desire will awaken, and somebody else is going to awaken that sexual desire. And so, by hanging around in a relationship that's sexless, what you're doing is you are the injured party now. But what's going to happen is it gets fucking worse, because eventually she's going to want satisfaction from somebody else. And she's going to get satisfaction, whether it's from the masseuse or it's from trips overseas, eat, pray, love stuff, or if it's from hardcore relationships, like flings inside the office, or neighbors, or whatever the fuck, she's going to get it eventually. And so by staying around, all you're doing is setting yourself up for a real fucking heartbreak. This is what most people do, they think, oh, if I stay around, it's going to work out. She's going to start, somehow it's going to work out. But what happens, of course, is she gets lonelier and lonelier, and the other guys look better and better, and eventually she breaks down. And then when a woman has an affair, it's just like those ones I talked about in my open relationships. They fall in love with you, and they fall in love with the other guy. And so then now you not only have a sexless relationship, you feel low self-esteem, you feel unworthy. Now she's having sex with somebody else, and you're sitting there, maybe if you're married and you're the husband who earns the money, you're paying the bills for this. And even if nobody's paying the bills, like you have a trust fund, or she has a trust fund, even if it doesn't cost you a penny, your emotions are being torn apart. You as a man are being fucking crushed and destroyed. And you should not allow that to happen. So the way to remedy that is you have to act, you have to be honest with yourself. And the one thing I will say about being honest is the unfortunate thing is that these things change on a dime. So you could have a great relationship, and then she decides there's some harm you did to her, could be even imaginary, like I said. And then she shuts down, and that's basically it. And then you're sitting there going, well, you're kind of like, I'll give it more time, all this, all that. And it's over. And you're like, and so it's difficult for humans to change quickly, but you have to. And by listening to this podcast and by preparing yourself, I think you'll probably respond a lot quicker than you would have responded. And again, with all my advice, I don't recommend taking it out on the other person. You don't even have to complain. You don't even have to say goodbye. Just pack your bags and leave. There's that song, Paul Simon, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And I'll put this song down in the link below. It's a great song. And it's just like, just get the fuck out and figure it out later, because your gut feeling after you listen to all this and you think about it, you write notes. Before you leave, I would say you definitely want to research, because you want to be sure. This is important stuff. You don't want to just suddenly leave and then you find out it was, whatever, a physical problem or something, right? You want to go back and research. So do your research. Your research is getting out a pen and paper and, like Rick said, and starting to write down everything that happened. What I would write in this case, a sexless relationship, is I would write how often you had sex before and what were the things she did that you liked. So maybe she held your hand when you're driving. Maybe she left the toilet seat up for you. She went and sat down and then you came in and she had the seat up because she wanted to make you happy, right? And look at all those things that she did before. The looks she gave you, the little notes, you can see those are very visible in the text that she sent you in the past. So go through all those. Try to narrow it down. As a guy, I think guys really like to figure stuff out, and they like to understand exactly when things changed and then to figure out why. And I think a lot of guys will say something like, oh, don't get too worried about it. Don't let it ruin your life. Don't get psycho about it. Just kind of walk away. I don't think so. Just like I told you, if someone fucks you over in business, you should get revenge. I highly recommend revenge if you're fucked over. In relationships, no. There's another thing. It's a completely different thing. But what I do recommend is figuring it out, because your brain is always going to want to know what happened. Why did she do that to you? It was so mean. It was so cruel. It was so sudden. And it was so unnecessary. And it was such a tragedy because, you had this, you had that. And there were so many things going on. Maybe you had a baby. Maybe you had, you had all these things you had just created together, and they were all destroyed at a moment. And so it's like your brain needs to know why. So I want you to go back, take all the notes you can, look at every text you can, go back through your Facebook, through your Instagram. If you look at your Facebook pictures and your Instagram pictures and the pictures that you have on your phone, you can see how your life changes. So just like when my videos, I was in Thailand and now I was in Vegas, now I'm in California, you see different scenery, right? And in your picture, you see different scenery, and you can start to remember back looking at the pictures. You're like, oh, that's when she did this. Oh, that's right. She said that one thing that time. Oh, that's the first time that she did that. And you start to and then you're like, you can narrow it down to when things changed, right? When did they change? I like to get it down to a date, like February 12th, 13th, 14th, right? You're like, I'm not sure one of those 3 days, but there was one of those 3 days when everything changed. And it took you, this long or a year or 2 years or whatever to figure it out. But now and it all will make sense. When you make sense out of it, it's simple as fuck. It's simple as fuck. Relationships are very simple. And girls' feelings, it's hot and cold and on and off. When she turns off, if you are meticulous, take notes, look at your pictures, look at the text she sent you, read through the lines, look at all the exclamation points and hearts and anything that gives you a hint that, she's one way and then the other way. And I do want to warn you about one thing is I remember the first time this one girl declined me for sex. And she said, "No, sweetie." And she never said sweetie before that. And she said, she had a big smile on her face. And I think she was really angry. And she was very resentful. And she was enjoying saying no, actually. And so I remember this big smile that came across her face. And I was like, that's interesting and then sweetie, the word sweetie. So if you're hearing a lot of words like sweetie and honey, but you're getting no sex, that's another sign it's another sign that something is seriously fucked up. It's kind of like the old ladies smoking, talking dirty about sex. They ain't having no sex. You know what I mean? If you ever worked in an office, you'll see the old ladies that just talk real raunchy and stuff. They actually are having zero sex. And that's why they talk so raunchy. Because it's their way of kind of like being sexual. Maybe they don't have any husband anymore and nobody wants them or whatever. And it's their way of like kind of like somehow vicariously living through other people and talking about sex. But that's another sign is when someone has a lot of sex, they often don't talk about sex that much because they're getting plenty, right? They're totally satisfied. The last thing they want to talk about is sex, right? They want to talk about software or some new website or some EDM concert or whatever, So you want to go and look at those things too. So it's not always a cold freeze on these messages. Sometimes the vocabulary will change. And you sense kind of subconsciously that something weighty happened, something important happened, but you're not sure what it is. So just make those notes and try to figure out what it is. And then once you understand what it is and you understand how long ago it was and you try to figure out what the reason was, that can be very helpful for you as a man. Just for you picking yourself up and moving on is that you kind of now you understand, okay, it's not like a big blur. It's not a big confusion. You always want to learn something from every relationship. If you don't learn anything, you're out of your mind because this is a chance for you as a man to learn and grow. So take that opportunity, learn from your mistakes and learn from your own experience and learn from others' experiences. And I hope my anything that I share gives you some kind of help and hope. And I want you to know that if you have been rejected in a relationship, you've been through a lot more than you think. You have been through some serious shit. This is very not easy to go through. So you gotta give yourself like a little break and say, oh my God, fuck, that was fucking miserable. Like don't be saying to yourself like harsh words like, oh, it was just that, it's nothing, I can handle. It's like you went through some serious trauma, admit it, pat yourself on the back, admit everything. Admit that you're not wanted. That's not easy. Nobody wants to admit that. But the thing is, as with all things like this, is that admitting in the end is a catharsis. Because who are you not to be wanted? You're fucking wanted. You're wanted by somebody else. You're a fucking valuable person. And there's tons of people out in this world. And you will see that because as soon as you get free of this person that doesn't like you, you're going to be out in the world. It might be a little bit of a rough ride in the beginning, but you'll find out there's other things going on. And also as a guy, especially as somebody is on the MGTOW channel, you're thinking, hey, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I didn't need relationships like I thought. Maybe I'm pretty damn happy by myself, you know? And a lot of guys, that's what they find, is like they're pretty fucking happy. Like they got their own money, they got their own house. You look at someone like MGTOW's Freedom, he's got his truck and he's got his house, and he's got his thing going on. He's happy, you know? So it doesn't always, getting out of a relationship doesn't always mean that you want to go find another relationship. It's just like, I think the one thing you do want to learn from this is that relationships change. You know, they're not for forever. And that if you value yourself, you have to keep in touch. If you're going to be in a relationship, you have to like keep a close eye on the fucking, almost like your hand on the pulse. You're like, your fingers on the pulse. I always think of that. Like when I was a lifeguard training, they taught us how to take pulse and how to check people, this and that, and save people. And I remember, like, I want to keep my hand on the pulse. I want to know what's going on. You know, keep your hand on your own pulse so that you know how you feel and your new options. And it can be really eye-opening. A lot of guys, like I say, it's getting out of a relationship is a chance to really try new things. You know, maybe get a new haircut, get some new clothes. Just really, those little simple things matter. They make a difference. They'll make you feel, they'll change your thinking. Do these things that change your feeling. You know, maybe take a trip somewhere else. If you have been thinking about something like, often leaving cities is a good idea, because when you're in the same city, you keep thinking about the same person. Like if you're in the same neighborhood, it's not always realistic for everybody, but if you can, moving cities is one of the best things you can do, because all of a sudden that person's not there. And it's all new people there, right? So it gives you that chance to kind of completely reset your brain. And that's very valuable. And that's a freedom that not many guys in history would have, because we were so landlocked in one place, right? Today we have so much freedom. Take advantage of that freedom. You know, something like moving overseas, moving to Thailand, moving to Honduras, Costa Rica is very easy to do now these days. Of course, now you want to get good advice. Don't get me wrong. You can make a lot of mistakes that are stupid and unnecessary. But as far as the possibility, it's a great chance to make some changes. And that's the other thing. And often they're changes that you've wanted to make for a long time anyway. So it's like when you break free of somebody that basically doesn't like you, hates you, your burden on your shoulders is going to drop off, and you'll start to realize that it wasn't your fault. You know, most things that people do is because of them, not because of you. So in other words, the store doesn't make the guy rob the store. The guy's robbing places, and he just happens to come to your store. And it's the same with a woman who, shuts you down with sex. It's not even anything to do with you. It's that's the way she operates. She's going to do the same thing to the next guy. This is a common thing for her. This is her issue. This is her deal. Now if you shutting it down, as a guy, you're shutting down sex with her, then you got to look at yourself. You got to think about it. Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I even getting in relationships? Like, do I even care about other people? Like, why? What the fuck is wrong with me? Start to look at yourself, But if you were the other party, just say, okay, well, maybe did I have any part in this? And how much was it? Or how much was not? And then what was the cause? And where did it all go wrong? And what was the date? And what was the time? And then once you figure it all out, and then once you get free, you'll be like, I'm telling you, you're going to be like breathing air again. You're going to be like, oh my God. I can tell you this though, is that guys that talk to me and they do this, they call me and they're like, I can't believe it. Why was I so stupid? Why did I stay with somebody who didn't like me for so long? Like, what was wrong with me? I'll never do it again. But of course, the next challenge comes up and you got to face it again, and it's going to be just as complicated and difficult and confusing. But the good part is that your muscles get stronger every time. So your ability to face yourself, your knowledge that not everything's your fault, your knowledge that other people have a role, and then your ability to see the difference and to correct yourself and to improve yourself, and also to escape from dangerous situations that harm your self-esteem and bring no benefit and just bring misery to your life and make you age faster, right? So that's another reason to get out, is happiness keeps you young. So if you want to stay young, definitely don't get into a crushing, miserable, sexless situation. That's like the worst idea I can think of. So thanks, guys. I hope that's been helpful. And girls too, because I know it happens both ways. And I have sympathy for both sides. I didn't in the beginning, but when I read all the articles, I realized it actually does happen to girls, that guys don't want to have sex with them. Unbelievable to me, but I definitely sympathize, and I can see that it might even be harder on a woman to be rejected. So I can definitely sympathize with that. So keep it going, guys. Keep the love for life and the love for yourself, So thanks for listening, and thanks for subscribing, and thanks for all the nice comments and everything. It's been fucking awesome lately. Every day I wake up and I read the comments, and I'm just like, I can't believe the interactions I'm having now these days online with you guys. It just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. The Rick interview was fucking amazing, and his ability to face himself and to move forward should give you motivation too. So there you go. Thanks for listening.